this course on design practice, module 15. So, we were talking about different dimensions like product complexity, then product technology. We also talked about the program structure or program features which are associated with the program which is envisioned for the new product line which is being launched, or the existing product line where you want to change into a CE environment. And then we also talked about competition as a dimension influencing the concurrent engineering environment. So, there are many other dimensions. For example, you could also have things like business relationship, or let us say you could have things like team scope, or resource tightness, or even schedule tightness sometimes for defining a CE environment. So, let us look at some of these leftover dimensions, and then we will try to go into the elements which we can tweak in order to change or influence some of these dimensions. So, the sixth important influential dimension is business relationship. So, what we mean by business relationship is sort of what kind of relationship does a company have with respect to all its stakeholders, which can include people like let us say vendors, or people who are related to partnering of the business. So, all suppliers, or maybe some kind of prime developers which are associated with some modular developments related to the final product line which is being envisioned. So, the relationship could be just arm's length relationship where you just are concerned with buying or selling, or the relationship could be something like a partnering relationship where you are involved in decision makings related to the overall flow of the organization, and also related to the overall quantum of financial burden that the organization has, and so you are a major stakeholder in it. So, your stakeholding nature can enable you to have different levels within the business relationship zone. So, let me just write this down here. So, this is about the degree of formality in which you are involved, up to which extent you are involved with the organization. For example, there could be just a arm's length relationship So, this could be only where it is driven by buying and selling requirements. There could be active collaboration, for example. So, this could establish joint requirements. For example, in a company, decision making could involve some kind of stakeholding from these active collaborators. And so, there can be a whole variety of stakeholding based on just a buying and selling requirement to being a participant in the decision making process, which we record as business relationship. So, this is a very important component in order to survive in a CE like environment, or build a CE environment for your existing concern, because what is the relationship level will kind of be influenced by the organization structure which you are in, or maybe the communication channels that you have within your organization structure. So, in a way all those elements of CE environments are going to again influence business relationship. There is also another very influential dimension of team scope. What I mean by team scope is the diversity of perspectives required for program execution. Okay, for example, a small core design team receiving advice from numerous sections such as let us say assembly, testing, packaging. This can only have a very limited scope, whereas a multifunctional team approach where there are stakeholding members from all these different divisions together as a group, as I showed you in the example problem earlier, could have a much wider scope and much say in all the decision making, and implementation also becomes very easy once such a cross functional team or a CFT is realized within organizations. So, team scope is again related to how the organizational hierarchy is designed or the structure is designed, and is there a possibility of such cross functional teams within the organization, right. So, I will just write this as diversity of perspectives for execution of the program so that defines the team scope. There could be a organization type which has a small core team of design being advised by everybody else, assembly, let us say packaging. This is the electronic systems work group assignment. So, therefore, they are interested in electronic assembly or electronic packaging heavily as far their product lines are concerned. Testing of the electronics that is being developed, okay, so on and so forth. So, this actually is limited team scope, whereas there could be another suitable team scope where there is a CFT, a cross functional team approach, which may be having a higher team scope. So, that is how you define one of the most again influential dimensions of the product requirements, which is team scope. Then there can also be dimensions related to resources. For example, either there is a resource tightness which prevails, you are not enabled to use infinitely available resources. Okay, the level of available resources, for example, staffing or funding may be limited, and then there can be a very tight situation where they are severely constrained. So, therefore, you need to divide again one of the major dimensions influencing the CE environment to be a resource tight environment or a resource lean environment, and then similarly you have a schedule tight or schedule lean. So, one particular instance can be a case where schedules do not matter really, you have enough amount of inventory. Another is the so called just in time or lean inventory practice, where there is almost one by one consumption versus production kind of a situation. So, therefore, there is a huge amount of tightness in the overall schedules in such environments. So, the CE environments in both the cases will be completely different, okay. And similarly, would it be different for resource lean as opposed to resource tight environments. So, let me just write these down briefly. So, this is the level of available resources which defines this dimension. So, for example, staffing and funding. So, there can be one which is severely constrained and there can be another which is abundantly supplied conditions. Schedule tightness we write as referring to limited schedule times, let us say schedule slack times, and this can kind of counteract for the deficiencies in the existing C methodology which is being followed or the environment which is built up. So, in this particular case there could be severely constrained schedules again as one form of concurrent engineering environment, or there could be significant slack time or allowed, okay, by the organization. So, based on these overall sort of 9 dimensions which is completing the phase 1 requirement, you characterize the existing level that the organization is in and how do you carry forward, such an organization. So, let me actually summarize all this in a matrix, so that we know about what are the different levels which are involved in such phase 1 requirements for a C environment. So, here for example, we would talk about program and product influencing dimensions, and then try to divide it into different levels, that is level A to D, as I had talked earlier. This is in context of the electronic work system group. So, most of the terminology that is used here is related to their system of organization or management, but I will try and explain in between, so that you get a fairly good idea about what we mean by these levels. So, let us say there are these levels of C concurrent engineering influencing dimensions on one side, and there principally you have 4 different categories A, B, C and D, and another is really the dimension that we are considering for categorizing into this various different segments of the concurrent engineering environment. So, let us look at the first dimension, for example, product complexity. We call this dimension 1, and I think I had already described to you the various levels in this case. For example, there can be catalog items which are very commonly available generically for all products around. There can be the most common parts which are slightly more state of the art, related to mostly the product line that we are referring to. Okay, most common parts, little state of the art you can say. Okay, state of the art, little sorta, and then you have very sensitive state of the arts. So, you can say state of the art sensitive interfaces, state of the art items. These are specially designed for the exact product line that is in question. It can't be used in any other application except the application that is being envisioned. So, such a product line or such a level of complexity, and then you can think of one where there is futuristic research which is involved. So, you push the existing SOTA or state of the art level, so that here you need a lot of R&D for doing it. For example, in electronic work systems there could be an issue of overall device sizing, and device sizing could go to the extent of let us say a few hundred nanometers, and there you use completely new technology, new outlook, new materials, and there are various new challenges which are being envisioned, for which you really need to push the state of the art envelope to that level by using a lot of research and lot of development. So, this is how you categorize into different levels. So, A signifies the most common and D signifies the least common or the most pushed state of the art to envision the C environment that we will be in once level D is followed. Then we talk about product technology. So, product technology also is categorized into various levels. For example, there could be a level A which relates to just available technology off the shelf, you can buy it, it is available in the market. Okay, so, this kind of product technology could be offered, or you have another case where you will have new applications in mind, or you custom build, for example, the products based on the customer's perspective or customer's requirement. There is also sort of another level where we need not only the applications, but also the new capabilities, okay, where you could probably borrow it from core technologies, but they have never been thought of earlier to be used in that particular mode or that particular capacity. And then there is something where new core technologies need to be developed, because here it does not exist and you have to develop. So, there again lie the categorization A to D for this product technology dimension. Then we also talk about program structure to an way, and program structures could be all formal, informal in nature. For example, there could be a very small staff in the program to run to actually realize the particular product line which is being envisioned here. Informal communication among the small staff, that could be one sort of structure where there is not much control, and this is what normally happens when you set up a work group, okay, for a certain cause within an organization. There could also be a moderate size staff level where there is some kind of a layered structure which is there, at least some responsibility is entrusted. There is a supervisorial lead followed by at least some people who are at layer 2 who can follow directions. There can also be another kind of a structure where there are multiple locations over which activities are carried out, okay, and there could be more formal communication between them. So, there are again work groups now specifically focused on certain areas, working in different locations and communicating to them in a formal manner, recording every communication that happens. And then there could be again a very large staff size of the whole organization, where there can be deep reporting structures. For example, everything that happens needs to be recorded and reported in great details, okay, with a large amount of staff, which actually can be the level D, okay, of this particular product structure dimension, a program structure dimension. Then we talk about again the fourth level, which is about program futures. The program futures could have typically something which is just one time standalone kind of a future, no follow up or follow on planned for what would happen to the program in future. Okay. So, something which is just done because they want to eliminate maybe a process defect which had come up in the C environment, or they want to just make for a certain new product line which does not have a scope of more than a few years time, you know. So, in this particular case in program future, you have completely no idea of what is going to happen to the structure of the program, or what is going to happen to the program once the particular product life cycle is over. Okay. And then we can talk about level B again of the concurrent engineering dimension, which is sort of, you know, some investments being made to minimize some costs. So, some optimization is carried out for the futuristic aspect, so that there can be a viable financial model which would exist in the future, and the program could be sort of sustaining in nature. There could be again another structure or another kind of a future which is talking about investment plan based on contractual boundaries. Okay. So, you invest, but you basically are able to get rid of the excess as and when needed, okay, because you have contractual basis of making a structure. And then there could be some which is strategically planned program for significant future opportunities, and so there the goal of the program would be to also more or less delve into what are going to be the opportunities 20 years down the line, let us say, for maintaining this program structure which is in place today for handling maybe some particular job requirement which has come up in the industry. So, this is how you plan the different levels of program future. For then we have again another influencing dimension, competition, and in competition you could have, let us say, level A, based on that there is no or minimal competition in the market. You are first in the line of the product that you are making, there is nothing else in the market, need not worry about or react to any kind of changes in the market environment. Then there could be some level of competition where there are significant barriers to market entry that may exist. Okay. So, that could be another level. So, you need to be aware of what are those barriers to cross over, enable yourself so that you have all the skills to sort of go and cross the barrier forces which are there to prevent your entry. Then there could be something where you know, a level where the competition is earmarked very formally through a competitive analysis. I am going to lay out certain tools in the near future which will talk about quality function deployment, for example, which is one of the major tools of learning about your competitors' nature or behavior, and also the strategies and systems which are available with them in order to stay afloat in the market. So, there are certain organized tools for carrying out such C planning or C activities. So, competitive analysis, okay, through market expansion could be one level of things or one level of the strategy to tackle competition. Okay. And then of course, you can have a business environment where there is active competition and pressure to anticipate and react immediately. Okay. So, this is the highest level of competition that a person can have in a certain business environment, active competition. So, if you are designing an organization which is geared to these challenges at the levels where the organization is set in, and you want to bring in a C approach to change the level and upgrade the level to a different level, obviously you need to change some elements within the organization and the strategies therein which are followed for the management of the organization, so that those levels get attained in the phase 1 or the product influencing dimensions. Okay. So, active competition, pressure to anticipate and react. This is the 4th level. We talk about the other influencing dimensions which we described in the last few slides. One is related to business relationships. Again, we have different levels of relationships. There could be arm's length relationship, as I mentioned, okay. And then there could be contractual kind of activities going on, where a part of workforce is hired which is probably not required to execute the main functionality of the product or the system in a contractual mode. You could talk about again another strategy where a vast majority of people are in teams. Okay. So, you have teaming strategy. You basically coordinate between people to formulate teams. For example, look at quality circles. They are one of the options which are available for teaming together. And then there is of course enterprise wide common goals driven business relationships, where we are talking about not one business or businesses, but a group of businesses actively participating together in a certain area of work. For example, in the electronics area, there could be some 5-6 different very big giants in this area combining together their business relationships, so that they can work together in order to bring a product or fade out a product. And such an environment which is created is by the way very difficult to penetrate by a new player. So, such kind of goals are always sometimes there in the business, which will allow you to have a sustenance for a long time, or a maybe long planned business model. So, there is also another dimension of team scope as mentioned. So, team scope could be with a dominant perspective. So, this could typically mean something like a small design team which is able to take advice from all nooks and corners, including assembly, testing, packaging, so on and so forth for this material, but still they form the dominant perspective in the final decision related to the design of the product. So, this could be one approach. Another is competing dominant perspectives. For example, if supposing there are more than one such perspectives which exist, in order to take a decision making, it needs to be somehow evaluated or optimized, so that you get the very best coming into picture out of some dominant perspectives. Now, this it may not be out of place to mention here that the dominant perspective is always not the right perspective, as you saw in the decision making process that we made earlier when we talked about the shaft example. The dominant perspective there was going ahead with something which appeared to be low cost on the processing front, but then you realize that when you take advice from other people, and not only advice, you actually ask them to participate with you in a CFT manner, in a CFT team manner, you get the dominating perspective to be dominating perspective, or the most effective perspective to be one where there is influence of the quality team as well as the purchase team more. And so, you go for something which is a very high expensive option, but still get within the same cost, or within let us say limited amount of manufacturing lead time and cost. So, always dominant perspectives may not be good, and C environment actually tries to go ahead not with dominant perspective, but with some kind of a optimization requirement which is there in the business environment, and always try to identify aggressively those optimization requirements. So, you have still another level here which talks about interrelated competitive perspectives. This is different than just the competitive or competing dominant perspectives, because here you can think of how a decision making in one area could be able to influence the decision making in another area, so that final design can emerge in this manner. So, you have that interrelated aspect of every phase of the product life cycle embedded into your thinking process. So, interrelated, optimized, competing perspectives. and then of course the level, the highest level that one could have here is aggressive optimization to meet requirements. So, here there is nothing called a dominant viewpoint, it is all about setting up stages for what is the requirement and how effectively you can meet it. So, that is how team scope can be defined. Okay. So, we will talk about the remaining two, that is resource tightness and schedule tightness, in the same table in the next lecture. In the interest of time I am going to close it here. But then once we do this, then we will be able to also lay out all the different organizational elements again, and then try to optimize on their levels and see how they match with these levels. Okay. So, in a way we will bring that analysis perspective to see what is the current level and how do you take it forward by improving what all in your organizational elements. So, with this I would like to end this particular module. Thank you very much for being with me.